Let me tell you something that changed my life forever. There are two kinds of people in this world: those who dream about where they want to go, and those who have already arrived there in their minds. The difference between these two groups isn't talent, it isn't luck, it isn't even opportunity. The difference is simple. One group speaks, thinks, and acts as if they've already made it, while the other group is still hoping it might happen someday. I learned this lesson the hard way. When I was 25 years old, I was broke. Not just financially broke, but broke in my thinking. I was broke in my speaking. I was broke in my actions. I had pennies in my pocket and nothing but wishes in my head. But then something remarkable happened. I met a man who changed everything for me. He didn't give me money. He didn't give me a job. He gave me something far more valuable. He gave me a new way of thinking about myself and my future. This man looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "Jim, you're not broke. You're just temporarily without funds. There's a big difference." At first I thought he was just trying to make me feel better. But then he explained something that opened my eyes. He said, "The person you are today is not the person you have to be tomorrow. But if you want to change your tomorrow, you have to start changing how you see yourself today." That's when I understood the power of mental arrival. You see, most people wait for their circumstances to change before they change their thinking. They say things like, "When I get the promotion, then I'll feel confident." Or, "When I have more money, then I'll act successful." Or, "When I lose the weight, then I'll feel good about myself." But that's backwards thinking. That's why most people stay stuck where they are. The successful person does it differently. The successful person changes their thinking first, and then their circumstances follow. They speak as if they've already arrived. They think as if they've already made it. They act as if. Success is not a question of if, but when. And you know what happens? Life starts to rearrange itself around their new way of being. Let me share with you what I mean by mental arrival. Mental arrival is when you stop seeing yourself as someone trying to become successful and start seeing yourself as someone who is successful, just working on the details. It's when you stop hoping for a better life and start expecting it. It's when you stop asking what if it works and start asking how can I make it work better. When I finally understood this concept, everything changed for me. I stopped introducing myself as someone who was trying to make it and started introducing myself as someone who was building something significant. I stopped talking about my problems and started talking about my projects. I stopped focusing on what I didn't have and started focusing on what I was creating. But here's the thing you need to understand. Mental arrival isn't about pretending. It's not about lying to yourself or ignoring reality. It's about understanding that your current reality is temporary, but your mental reality is what creates your future reality. It's about living from your future, not from your past. Think about this for a moment. Every great achievement in history started with someone who had mentally arrived before they physically arrived. The Wright brothers were flying in their minds long before they built their airplane. Thomas Edison was illuminating the world in his thoughts long before he invented the light bulb. Martin Luther King Jr. was living in his dream long before he shared it with the world. These people understood something that most people miss. They understood that the external world is simply a reflection of the internal world. They understood that what happens in your mind today becomes what happens in your life tomorrow. They understood that if you want to change your results, you have to change your thinking. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, "Jim, that sounds nice, but you don't understand my situation. You don't know how bad things are for me right now." And you're right. I don't know your specific situation, but I know this. Your situation is not your destination. Your current circumstances are not your permanent address. They're just where you're visiting right now. The question is not whether you can change your circumstances. The question is whether you're willing to change your thinking first. Are you willing to start speaking as if you've already arrived? Are you willing to start thinking as if success is inevitable? Are you willing to start acting as if you're already the person you want to become? Here's what I've learned after decades of studying successful people. They all have one thing in common. They all reached their destination in their minds before they reached it in their lives. They all started acting like the person they wanted to become before they became that person. They all began speaking with the confidence of someone who had already made it, even when they were just getting started. And here's the beautiful part. When you start speaking, thinking, and acting as if you've already arrived, something magical happens. Opportunities start showing up that you never noticed before. People start seeing you differently. Resources start flowing toward you. Doors start opening that were previously closed. It's not magic. It's simply the natural result of aligning your mental reality with your desired physical reality. But most people never experience this because they're waiting for permission. They're waiting for someone to tell them they're ready. They're waiting for their circumstances to be perfect. They're waiting for all their fears to go away. They're waiting for a guarantee. And while they're waiting, life is passing them by. The successful person doesn't wait for permission. They give themselves permission. They don't wait for perfect circumstances. They create better circumstances through their thinking and actions. They don't wait for their fears to disappear. They move forward in spite of their fears. Let me tell you about Sarah, a woman I met a few years ago. She came to one of my seminars and told me she wanted to start her own business, but she felt like she wasn't ready. She said she didn't have enough experience, didn't have enough money, and didn't have enough confidence. I asked her one simple question. Sarah, when will you be ready? She thought about it for a moment and said, I don't know, maybe in a few years. I said, Sarah, let me ask you another question. If you were already running a successful business, how would you think about this situation? She was quiet for a long moment. Then something shifted in her eyes. She said, if I were already successful, I would see this as just another challenge to solve, not as a reason to give up. That was her moment of mental arrival. She stopped thinking like someone who wanted to start a business and started thinking like someone who already owned a business. She stopped focusing on all the reasons she couldn't do it and started focusing on all the ways she could make it work. 6 months later, Sarah called me. She had not only started her business, but it was already profitable. When I asked her what made the difference, she said, I stopped waiting to become ready and started acting as if I was already ready. I stopped thinking like an employee and started thinking like a business owner. Everything changed when I changed how I saw myself. That's the power of mental arrival. It's not about where you are today. It's about where you've already arrived in your mind. It's about speaking, thinking, and acting from that place of arrival, even when your external circumstances haven't caught up yet. Your mind is the most powerful tool you have for creating your future. But most people use it as a storage facility for their problems instead of as a workshop for their possibilities. They spend their time thinking about everything that's wrong with their current situation. Starting today, I want you to begin the process of mental arrival. I want you to start seeing yourself not as you are, but as you're becoming. I want you to start speaking, not from where you've been, but from where you're going. I want you to start thinking, not about your current limitations, but about your future possibility. Because here's what I know for certain. The person who has mentally arrived at their destination is already halfway there. Now that you understand the power of mental arrival, let me share with you the first practical step in making this transformation real. It all starts with how you speak. Your words are not just sounds that come out of your mouth. They are the programming language of your subconscious mind. They are the seeds you plant in the soil of your future. They are the blueprint your life follows. Listen carefully to how you talk about yourself and your situation. Most people speak like victims. They say things like, I can't afford it. I'm not good at that. I don't have time. Things never work out for me. I'm just not lucky. Every time you speak like this, You're reinforcing the very reality you say you want to change. But the person who has mentally arrived speaks differently. They don't say, I can't afford it. They say, how can I afford it? They don't say, I'm not good at that. They say, I'm getting better at that. They don't say, I don't have time. They say, I'll make time for what matters. Do you see the difference? It's not just positive thinking, it's powerful programming. Let me tell you about the day I learned this lesson. I was having lunch with a very successful businessman, and I was complaining about my financial situation. I said, I'm broke, I don't have any money, I can't seem to get ahead. He stopped eating and looked at me seriously. He said, Jim, stop talking like that immediately. I was surprised. I said, what do you mean? He said, every time you say you're broke, you're programming your mind to stay broke. Every time you say you can't get ahead, you're instructing your subconscious to keep you behind. Then he taught me something that changed everything. He said, instead of saying you're broke, say you're temporarily between fortunes. Instead of saying you can't afford something, ask how you can afford it. Instead of saying things never work out, say you're learning what doesn't work so you can find what does. That conversation changed the way I spoke to myself and about myself forever. Your subconscious mind is always listening to what you say. It doesn't argue with you. It doesn't question you. It simply accepts what you tell it as fact and works to make it true. When you say, I always mess things up, your subconscious says, okay, let me help you mess this up too. When you say, I never have enough money, your subconscious says, okay, let me make sure you don't have enough money this month either. But when you start speaking like someone who has already arrived, something different happens. When you say, I'm building wealth, your subconscious starts looking for ways to build wealth. When you say, I'm becoming healthier every day, your subconscious starts guiding you toward healthier choices. When you say, good things are coming my way, your subconscious starts noticing good opportunities. Here's what successful people understand about language that unsuccessful people miss. Words create worlds. The words you use consistently become the reality you experience consistently. If you want to change your world, you have to change your words first. Let me give you some practical examples. Instead of saying, I'm trying to lose weight, say, I'm becoming healthier and more fit. Instead of saying, I'm looking for a job, say, I'm connecting with my next career opportunity. Instead of saying, I hope this works, say, I'm making this work. Do you feel the difference in energy? Do you feel the difference in certainty? Do you feel the difference in power? The person who is mentally arrived doesn't hope for success. They expect it. They don't try to make things happen. They make things happen. They don't wish for a better life. They create a better life. And it all starts with how they speak about themselves and their future. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think speaking this way is about lying to themselves or pretending everything is fine when it's not. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about speaking from your future, not from your past. I'm talking about speaking from your potential, not from your problems. I'm talking about speaking from where you're going, not from where you've been. When I started changing how I spoke, people noticed immediately. They started treating me differently. They started seeing me differently. They started responding to me differently. Why? Because I was no longer speaking like someone who was hoping to make it. I was speaking like someone who was already making it. I remember the first time I introduced myself at a business meeting after making this change. Instead of saying, I'm trying to build a business, I said, I'm building a business that helps people improve their lives. Instead of saying, I hope to be successful someday, I said, I'm committed to creating significant value in the marketplace. The response was immediate and dramatic. People took me more seriously. They listened more carefully. They remembered me more clearly. Here's something else I learned about language. The words you use not only program your own mind, but they also influence how others see you and treat you. When you speak with uncertainty, others feel uncertain about you. When you speak with confidence, others feel confident in you. When you speak like someone who has already arrived. Let me tell you about Maria, a woman who attended one of my seminars. She had been unemployed for 8 months and was getting more discouraged every day. She told me she had been to dozens of interviews but couldn't get hired. I asked her to tell me how she typically answered the question, "Tell me about yourself," in interviews. She said, "Well, I've been out of work for a while now, and I'm really hoping someone will give me a chance. I know I don't have all the experience you're looking for, but I'm willing to learn. I really need this job." I stopped her right there. I said, "Maria, would you hire someone who spoke like that?" She thought about it and said, probably not. Then I taught her to speak like someone who had mentally arrived. I taught her to say things like, "I'm a results-oriented professional who is selective about my next opportunity because I want to make sure it's the right fit for both me and the company. I bring a combination of skills and fresh perspective that can contribute to your team's success immediately." 3 weeks later, Maria called me with excitement. She had received 2 job offers in 1 week. When I asked her what made the difference, she said, "I stopped begging for a job and started interviewing them to see if they deserve me. I stopped speaking like someone who needed their approval and started speaking like someone who could help them succeed. Everything changed when my language changed." That's the power of speaking like you've already arrived. It changes how you see yourself, and it changes how others see you. It changes what you believe is possible, and it changes what actually becomes possible. But changing your language isn't just about talking to other people. It's also about how you talk to yourself. The conversation you have with yourself all day long is the most important conversation you'll ever have. Most people are their own worst critic. They say things to themselves that they would never say to their worst enemy. "I'm so stupid. I always mess up. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve success. I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't have what it takes." Stop it. Stop talking to yourself like that immediately. You wouldn't let someone else talk to your best friend that way. Instead, start speaking to yourself like you're your own best friend and biggest supporter. Start saying things like, "I'm learning and growing every day. I'm getting better at this. I deserve good things. I have what it takes. I'm exactly where I need to be to get to where I want to go. Great things are happening in my life." Here's what I want you to understand. Your words are not just describing your reality, they are creating your reality. Every word you speak is either building the future you want or tearing it down. Every sentence is either moving you closer to your goals or further away from them. Every conversation is either programming you for success or programming you for failure. The successful person understands this and chooses their words carefully. They speak about their challenges as temporary situations that they are solving. They speak about their goals as definite outcomes that are in progress. They speak about themselves as people who are already successful, just working on expanding that success. They say things like, "I'm in the process of achieving my goals. Every challenge is making me stronger and wiser. I'm attracting the right opportunities and people into my life. My success is inevitable because I'm willing to do what it takes. I'm not just dreaming about a better life, I'm building it every day." Listen to yourself speak for the next week. Pay attention to the words you use when you talk about your situation, your goals, and your future. Are you speaking like someone who has mentally arrived, or are you speaking like someone who is stuck in their current circumstance? Remember, the person you're becoming is listening to every word you say. The future you're creating is being shaped by every sentence you speak. The life you're building is being constructed with the language you use every day. Start speaking like you've already arrived. Start talking about your goals as if they're already in motion. Start describing yourself as if you're already the person you want to become. Because here's the truth. The moment you start speaking like you've already made it, you've taken the first real step toward actually making it. Now that you've learned to speak like someone who has already arrived, let me teach you the next crucial step, thinking from the end result. Most people think their way to their goals, but successful people think from their goals. There's a world of difference between these two approaches, and understanding this difference will transform how you approach every challenge and opportunity in your life. When most people think about their goals, they think from where they are now. They look at their current situation and try to figure out how to get from here to there. They focus on all the obstacles between them and their destination. They worry about all the things that could go wrong. They get overwhelmed by the distance they have to travel. This kind of thinking keeps them stuck because they're thinking from their problems instead of thinking from their solutions. But the person who has mentally arrived thinks differently. They start from the end result and work backwards. They think as if they've already achieved their goal and then ask themselves, what did I do to get here? What decisions did I make? What actions did I take? What kind of person did I become? This kind of thinking opens up possibilities that you can't see when you're thinking from your current circumstances. Let me share with you how I learned this principle. Years ago, I set a goal to earn $1 million. At the time, I was earning about $20,000 a year, so this seemed impossible. Every time I thought about this goal from where I was, I got discouraged. The gap seemed too big. The obstacles seemed too many. The time seemed too long. Then my mentor taught me something that changed everything. He said, Jim, stop thinking about how to make $1 million. Start thinking like a millionaire. Ask yourself, what does a millionaire think about? How does a millionaire spend their day? What decisions does a millionaire make? What does a millionaire focus on? This shifted everything for me. Instead of thinking about all the money I didn't have, I started thinking about the value I needed to create. Instead of focusing on my current income, I started focusing on my future contribution. Instead of worrying about the obstacles in my path, I started planning the steps I would take. I began thinking from the end result, and suddenly the path became clear. Here's what thinking from the end result does for you. It shifts your focus from problems to solutions. It moves your attention from obstacles to opportunities. It changes your perspective from scarcity to abundance. It transforms your mindset from limitation to possibility. When you think from the end result, you start asking different questions. Instead of asking, why me, you ask, how can I? Instead of asking, what if it doesn't work, you ask, what if it does work? Instead of asking, do I have what it takes, you ask, what do I need to develop? These better questions lead to better answers, and better answers lead to better results. Let me tell you about Robert, a man I coached several years ago. Robert wanted to start his own consulting business, but he was stuck thinking from his current situation. He worked for a large corporation and had never run his own business. He kept saying things like, I don't know how to find clients. I don't have any connections. I don't know how to price my services. I'm not ready to be on my own. I taught Robert to think from the end result. I said, Robert, imagine it's 5 years from now, and you're running a successful consulting business. You have great clients, you're making good money, and you love what you do. Now, looking back from that successful future, what do you see? What did you do to build this business? How did you find your first clients? How did you develop your expertise? How did you overcome your fears? Something magical happened when Robert shifted his thinking. He started seeing possibilities he had never noticed before. He realized that his experience at the corporation was actually valuable to smaller companies who needed that expertise. He saw that he already knew people who could become clients or refer clients to him. He understood that he didn't have to have everything figured out before he started. He just had to start and figure it out along the way. Within 6 months, Robert had launched his consulting business while still working his day job. Within 2 years, he was earning more from his consulting than from his corporate salary. When I asked him what made the difference, he said, I stopped thinking like an employee trying to become a consultant and started thinking like a consultant who was building his practice. I stopped focusing on what I didn't know and started focusing on what I could learn. Everything changed when I changed my thinking. That's the power of thinking from the end result. It doesn't just change what you see. It changes what becomes possible. It doesn't just shift your perspective, it shifts your reality. But here's something important you need to understand. Thinking from the end result isn't about wishful thinking or fantasy. It's about strategic thinking and mental rehearsal. It's about training your mind to operate from a place of success instead of a place of struggle. It's about conditioning yourself to think like the person you want to become. Every successful person I've ever met thinks this way. They don't spend their time worrying about their current limitations. They spend their time planning from their future possibilities. They don't focus on what they don't have. They focus on what they're creating. They don't think about all the reasons it won't work. They think about all the ways to make it work. Well, this kind of thinking becomes a habit. The more you practice thinking from the end result, the more natural it becomes. The more natural it becomes, the more your daily decisions align with your ultimate goals. And when your daily decisions align with your ultimate goals, success becomes inevitable. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say your goal is to lose 50 pounds and get in the best shape of your life. Most people think from where they are now. They focus on how much weight they have to lose. They worry about how long it's going to take. They think about all the foods they'll have to give up. They get overwhelmed by the amount of exercise they'll need to do. This kind of thinking makes the goal feel impossible. But what if you thought from the end result instead? What if you started thinking like someone who is already in the best shape of their life? How does that person eat? What does that person do for exercise? How does that person spend their time? What choices does that person make every day? When you think this way, the daily decisions become obvious. The person who is in great shape doesn't think about going to the gym as a chore. They think about it as part of their lifestyle. They don't think about healthy food as deprivation. They think about it as fuel for their body. They don't think about their discipline as sacrifice. They think about it as self-respect. When you start thinking like this person, you start acting like this person. And when you start acting like this person, you become this. Here's another example. Let's say your goal is to build a successful business. Most people think from their current situation. They worry about not having enough money to start. They focus on their lack of experience. They think about all the competition in the marketplace. They get paralyzed by all the things they don't know. But the successful business owner thinks differently. They think from the end result. They ask questions like, what problem am I solving for my customers? What value am I creating in the marketplace? How am I making people's lives better? What systems do I need to build? What team do I need to assemble? This kind of thinking leads to action instead of paralysis. When you think from the end result, you start making decisions like the person you want to become. If your goal is to become wealthy, you start thinking about investments instead of just expenses. If your goal is to become healthy, you start thinking about energy instead of just appearance. If your goal is to become successful, you start thinking about contribution instead of just achievement. This shift in thinking creates what I call future pull. Instead of having to push yourself toward your goals start pulling you toward them. Instead of success feeling like something you have to chase, it starts feeling like something that's drawing you forward. Instead of having to motivate yourself every day, you find yourself naturally moving in the right direction. But here's the key. You have to think from the end result consistently. You can't do it just when you feel like it or just when things are going well. You have to make it your default way of thinking. You have to train your mind to automatically think from success instead of from struggle. This means catching yourself when you slip back into old thinking patterns. When you find yourself focusing on what's wrong with your current situation, shift your focus to what's right about your future situation. When you catch yourself thinking about all the obstacles in your way, redirect your thinking to all the opportunities around you. When you notice yourself dwelling on your limitations, refocus on your possibilities. The successful person has trained their mind to think from abundance instead of scarcity, from possibility instead of limitation, from solutions instead of problems, from the future instead of the past. They've made thinking from the end result a habit, and that habit has transformed their life. I want you to start practicing this right now. Think about one goal that's important to you. Now, instead of thinking about how to achieve that goal from where you are today, think about what your life looks like when you've already achieved it. What do you see? How do you feel? What are you doing differently? What decisions led you to this success? Now, from that place of already having achieved your goal, what's the next logical step you should take? What decision should you make today? What action should you take this week? What habit should you develop this month? When you think from the end result, the path forward becomes clear. Remember, successful people don't just think their way to their goals. They think from their goals. They don't just plan for success, they think from success. And when you start thinking from the end result, you'll find that the end result starts thinking its way into your reality. Now we come to the part that separates the dreamers from the achievers, the talkers from the doers, the wishers from the winners. You can speak like you've already made it. You can think from the end result. But if you don't act with certainty and purpose, you'll remain exactly where you are. Action is where the rubber meets the road. Action is where dreams become reality. Action is where mental arrival becomes physical arrival. But here's what most people don't understand about action. They think they have to feel ready before they act. They think they have to have all the answers before they start. They think they have to eliminate all their fears before they move forward. That's why most people never act at all. They're waiting for a certainty that will never come. The person who has mentally arrived acts differently. They don't wait for certainty to act, they act to create certainty. They don't wait for confidence to move, they move to build confidence. They don't wait for the perfect moment, they make the moment perfect by taking action. Let me tell you about the day I learned this lesson. I had been thinking about starting my own business for months. I had read books, I had attended seminars, I had made plans, I had even set goals, but I hadn't acted. I was waiting until I felt ready. I was waiting until I knew exactly what to do. I was waiting until I had more money. I was waiting until the timing was perfect. Then one day, my mentor called me and asked a simple question. Jim, how long have you been thinking about starting your business? I said, about 8 months. He said, and how much closer are you to actually starting? I had to admit I wasn't any closer. He said, Jim, you've been preparing to get ready to start thinking about beginning. Stop preparing and start acting. The readiness you're waiting for will come from doing, not from thinking. That conversation changed everything for me. I realized that I had been using preparation as an excuse to avoid action. I had been using planning as a way to postpone doing. I had been confusing motion with movement, activity with accomplishment, thinking with acting. The next day, I took my first real action. I didn't wait until I felt ready. I acted while I was scared. I didn't wait until I had all the answers. I started with the answers I had and learned the rest along the way. I didn't wait until the conditions were perfect. I worked with the conditions I had and improved them through action. Here's what I learned. Action creates clarity. When you're just thinking about something, everything seems complicated. When you start acting, things become clear. Action generates information. Action produces feedback. Action creates momentum. And momentum is what transforms dreams into reality. But not just any action will do. The person who has mentally arrived doesn't just act. They act with certainty and purpose. They act as if success is inevitable. They act as if they already are the person they want to become. They act as if they're already living the life they want to live. What does this look like in practice? It means investing in yourself before you see the return. It means studying your field as if you're already a professional in it. It means networking as if you already belong in those circles. It means dressing for the job you want, not the job you have. It means spending money on your development as if you're already successful. I remember when I first started speaking professionally, I was terrified. I had no experience, I had no reputation, I had no track record, but I decided to act as if I was already a successful speaker. I invested in professional marketing materials before I had any speaking engagements. I practiced my presentations as if I was already book solid. I studied other successful speakers as if I was already one of them. People thought I was crazy. They said I was wasting money. They said I should wait until I had more experience. They said I should start small and work my way up. But I understood something they didn't. I understood that acting like the person I wanted to become was the fastest way to become that person. Within 1 year, I was earning more from speaking than most speakers earn after 5 years in the business. When people asked me how I did it so quickly, I told them I acted like a successful speaker before I became a successful speaker. I didn't wait for success to start acting successful. I acted successful to create. That's the difference between acting with certainty and acting with hesitation. When you act with certainty, you send a message to your subconscious mind that success is inevitable. When you act with hesitation, you send a message that failure is possible. Your subconscious mind responds accordingly. When you act with certainty, other people sense it. They feel your confidence. They believe in your success because you believe in your success. When you act with hesitation, people sense that too. They feel your doubt. They question your abilities because you're questioning your ability. Let me tell you about Jennifer, a woman who wanted to start her own marketing agency. She had been working for other agencies for 10 years and had great experience, but she was afraid to go out on her own. She kept saying she needed more experience, more contacts, more money in the bank. I taught Jennifer to act with certainty and purpose. I said, Jennifer, stop acting like someone who wants to start an agency and start acting like someone who owns an agency. Stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like a business owner. Stop preparing to get ready and start getting ready by doing. Jennifer took my advice. She created professional business cards and marketing materials. She set up a proper office space in her home. She started networking as a business owner, not as someone hoping to become a business owner. She began talking to potential clients as if she already had an agency, not as if she was thinking about starting one. The response was immediate and dramatic. Within 3 months, Jennifer had landed her first major client. Within 6 months, she had more work than she could handle alone. Within 1 year, she had hired 2 employees and was earning twice what she made working for someone else. When I asked her what made the difference, she said, I stopped acting like someone who was trying to start a business and started acting like someone who was running a business. I stopped waiting for permission to be successful and started giving myself permission to act successful. The moment I started acting with certainty, everything changed. That's the power of acting with certainty and purpose. It doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see yourself. It doesn't just create external results, it creates internal transformation. It doesn't just move you toward your goals, it moves your goals toward you. But acting with certainty doesn't mean acting recklessly. It doesn't mean being foolish or ignoring reality. It means being decisive. It means being committed. It means being consistent. It means taking the actions that the successful version of yourself would take, even when you don't feel like it. Here's what successful people understand about action that unsuccessful people miss. They understand that feelings follow actions, not the other way around. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act. Successful people act and then feel motivated. Most people wait to feel confident before they move. Successful people move and then feel confident. If you wait for the feeling, you'll wait forever. If you wait for certainty, you'll never start. If you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never move. The successful person acts in spite of their feelings, creates certainty through action, and improves conditions by moving forward. Let me give you some practical examples of what this looks like. If your goal is to get in shape, don't wait until you feel like exercising. Act like someone who exercises regularly and go to the gym whether you feel like it or not. If your goal is to build wealth, don't wait until you feel like saving money. Act like someone who builds wealth and invest a portion of your income every month regardless of how you feel about it. If your goal is to start a business, don't wait until you feel ready. Act like someone who owns a business and start taking the actions a business owner takes. If your goal is to improve your relationships, don't wait until you feel like being kind. Act like someone who has great relationships and treat people with kindness and respect whether you feel like it or not. This is what I call acting from your future self instead of acting from your current self. Your current self is influenced by your past experiences, your current circumstances, and your present emotions. Your future self is guided by your goals, your vision, and your commitment to growth. When you act from your future self, you make decisions based on where you're going, not where you've been. You take actions based on who you're becoming, not who you've been. You invest based on your potential, not your past. You behave based on your dreams, not your doubt. This requires discipline, it requires consistency, it requires commitment. Most people act based on how they feel in the moment. They exercise when they feel like it, they save money when it's convenient, they work hard when they're motivated, they're kind when they're in a good mood. That's why most people get inconsistent results. The person who has mentally arrived acts with certainty and purpose, regardless of how they feel. They've decided who they want to become, and they act like that person every day. They've committed to their goals, and they take actions that support those goals every day. They've chosen their future, and they make decisions from that future every day. But here's the beautiful thing about acting with certainty and purpose. The more you do it, the more natural it becomes. The more you act like the person you want to become, the more you actually become that person. The more you take actions aligned with your goals, the more your life aligns with your goal. Every action you take is either building the future you want or tearing it down. Every decision you make is either moving you closer to your goals or further away from them. Every day you either act like the person you want to become or you act like the person you've always been. The choice is yours. You can keep waiting for the perfect moment, or you can start acting with certainty and purpose right now. You can keep preparing to get ready, or you can start getting ready by doing. You can keep thinking about your goals, or you can start acting on your goals. Remember, mental arrival without action is just wishful thinking. But mental arrival combined with purposeful action is the formula for inevitable success. You've already arrived in your mind. Now it's time to act like it. Now we come to the final and most important part of this transformation. You've learned to mentally arrive at your destination. You've changed how you speak about yourself and your future. You've trained your mind to think from the end result. You've committed to acting with certainty and purpose. Now you must learn to live the reality before it manifests. This is where patience meets faith. This is where commitment meets character. This is where most people give up and where successful people press on. Living the reality before it manifests means maintaining your new way of being even when the external results haven't caught up yet. Let me be honest with you. There will be a gap between when you start speaking, thinking, and acting like you've already arrived and when you actually arrive. During this gap, your commitment will be tested. Your faith will be challenged. Your character will be built. This is the season that separates those who truly understand success from those who just want to feel successful. During this time, people might question you. They might say you're being unrealistic. They might tell you to come back to earth. Some will mock your confidence. Others will doubt your commitment. But you must remember something crucial. They can only see where you are, not where you're going. They can only judge your current circumstances, not your future reality. I remember when I was building my speaking career, for months I spoke, thought, and acted like a successful speaker, but I was still struggling financially. People thought I was crazy for investing in marketing materials when I didn't have clients. They questioned my confidence when I didn't have credentials. They doubted my commitment when I didn't have results. But I understood something they didn't. I was building the foundation for my future, not just trying to fix my present. This is what living the reality before it manifests requires. It requires you to stay committed to your new way of being even when the old results are still showing up. It requires you to keep speaking like you've arrived even when you haven't arrived yet. It requires you to keep thinking from your future even when your present seems overwhelming. It requires you to keep acting with certainty even when everything feels uncertain. But here's what happens when you stay committed during this gap. Your character grows stronger. Your faith becomes unshakable. Your confidence becomes authentic. You develop what I call success muscles that will serve you for the rest of your life. The process of living your reality before it manifests doesn't just create external success, it creates internal transformation. The most successful people I know have all gone through this season. They've all had to maintain their new way of being while their old circumstances were still present. They've all had to believe in their future when their present gave them every reason to doubt. They've all had to act successful. And here's the beautiful truth. When you stay committed to living your reality before it manifests, the manifestation becomes inevitable. When you refuse to go back to your old way of speaking, thinking, and acting, your new reality has no choice but to show up. When you live from your future consistently, your future becomes your present. But you must be patient. Success has its own timeline, and you can't rush it. What you can do is stay faithful to the process. What you can do is keep growing into the person your goals require you to become. What you can do is use this waiting period to build the character and capability you'll need when your success arrives. Remember, you're not just trying to achieve goals. You're becoming the kind of person who naturally achieves those goals. You're not just trying to get somewhere. You're becoming someone. And that becoming process is just as important as the arrival. So stay committed. Keep speaking like you've already made it. Keep thinking from the end result. Keep acting with certainty and purpose. Live your reality before it manifests, and I promise you this, the day will come when your external world catches up with your internal world. The day will come when others see what you've been seeing all along. The day will come when your mental arrival becomes your physical arrival. That day is coming. Keep living like it's already here, and soon it will be. Because when you truly speak, think, and act as if you've already arrived, arrival is not a matter of if, but when. Your time is coming. Your success is inevitable. Your reality is waiting for you to live it into existence. The choice is yours. The power is within you. The time is now. Start living your reality today, and watch as that reality becomes your world tomorrow.